In our first reading this morning, Elisha takes up Elijah's mantle, both figuratively and literally. Their relationship began when Elijah was told by God about Elisha's existence and said, "This is the next one I'm going to anoint as a leader of prophets over Israel." And so Elijah traveled to where he found Elisha. And he took off his mantle and he put his mantle over Elisha's shoulder, which was a symbolic act of adoption. It essentially says, "I am now adopting you out of your family of birth, your family of origin, and into this community of prophets, wandering prophets." It was rare for a prophet to just be acting alone. They would have students who would follow them, who would try to learn from them, and some of whom would remember their words, thankfully, so that we have them now. And so Elisha was adopted by having Elijah's mantle placed over him. And when this happened, Elisha was plowing a field. And he had some oxen, he had his plow, of course. And so he slaughtered the oxen, and he cooked them over a fire made with the plow he had been using. Like, this is a serious act of commitment. Elijah puts his mantle over him, and Elisha says, "Yes, I am here for this 100%. I will literally burn my old life and leave it as an offering to God and follow you." And so the end of Elijah's life is coming, and somehow the people around him just know it. It's going to happen. And Elisha is with him, and what he asks for is a double helping of Elijah's spirit. Now, this is kind of part of the story, that Elisha goes on to do twice as many prophetic acts as Elijah did. That's part of his story. But this would also have been a very common thing for inheritance rules at the time. The firstborn son would receive a double share of the inheritance from their father. So let's say as a father you have 3 sons, you would divide all you had into 4 portions. And the first son would get 2 portions, and the other 2 sons would get 1 each. And so Elisha is also simply asking for that acknowledgement and that inheritance as essentially Elijah's firstborn. Among all these other groups of prophets, or this group of prophets, Elisha is like, acknowledge me as first, and let me inherit the double portion from you. And as the story continues, Elisha does. And as I say, part of his story is doing greater things than Elijah did. Elisha also inherited a double portion of trouble. He had a lot of serious problems that Elijah had been dealing with and that now become Elisha's problem. There are still powerful people in Israel worshiping idols and denying God. There are these Arameans and Moabites that they are going to have to fight, neighboring tribes and peoples who are impinging upon their land. There are the Syrians next door who are growing in power, and Elisha is going to have to deal with the Syrian rulers so they don't just roll over Israel and take it over. When he asked for a double portion, that might not have been what he had in mind, but that is what he got. When he took up Elijah's mantle, he received a double portion of Elijah's spirit that he was given, and also a double portion of Elijah's trouble that he had been dealing with his whole life as a prophetic leader of Israel. Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Luke as a story of Jesus. It's similar in a way, but it's basically people responding to Jesus in an opposite way to how Elisha responded to Elijah. Remember, Elisha burned his old life as commitment to Elijah and never looked back. Jesus has a different experience. His face is set to go to Jerusalem, and that essentially says that he is intent on a confrontation with the powerful people who would rather he were silenced or dead. In Jerusalem, that's where you go to face off with Rome. That's where you go to face off with the temple and the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees. They're all there. If Jesus would just avoid Jerusalem, he probably could have lived a much longer life and just been just a rock star in the byways of Galilee. But his face is set to Jerusalem. People see this. They kind of see where this is going, and they take a pass. Say, look, it looks like you are looking for more trouble than I'm interested in, so I will not take up this mantle. I will not take your mantle on me and follow you. I'll take a pass. There are other people who balk and turn aside because they'd like to follow Jesus, but Jesus makes it clear what that's like. Jesus is a homeless, indigent, wandering preacher. He doesn't have a house. He doesn't have a mortgage. He doesn't have land or wealth or cattle or animals or anything. The foxes have a place to live. The birds have a nest. But Jesus doesn't know where he's going to sleep at night, many nights. So this also causes people to be like, that's more trouble than I'm interested in. I'll pass. Some people Jesus asks to follow him, but they have a but first in mind. They say, I'll follow you, but first. Jesus isn't interested in your but first. Jesus is interested in a yes. And so when they say but first, Jesus is like, I think you should let this go. Go preach the kingdom, but you're probably not ready to follow me. Other people say, Jesus, I'm ready to follow you, but first, I have something else to do. And Jesus' answer to that is, anyone who puts their hand to the plow and looks back is unworthy of the kingdom of God. Which, of course, reminds me of Elisha literally burning his plow. This is Old Time Religion Sunday. We're celebrating an adoption. Because baptism is one of the ways that we are adopted into the family of God. That is one of the functions that it has. Just like Elisha, who was adopted by Elijah putting his mantle over him. We're also celebrating and remembering our past as this particular congregation, but also just in general. How many people were baptized in this congregation? Just out of curiosity. So very few. Most of us were baptized elsewhere. And so we don't just have memories and backgrounds and things we've inherited from this place, but from churches all over the country. And we are taking some time this Sunday to remember those things and to sing some of the old songs and to speak and hear some of the old words and to evoke those memories and to remember people who have gone before. When we take up the mantle of participation in the body of Christ, there are so many things that we just receive without having to earn them. Like, I didn't build this pulpit, and I'm not the first person to stand in it, and I will not be the last. That is something I try to bear in mind as I stand here. I didn't lay down the floorboards that I'm standing on. We did not shape the pews in which we sit. We did not put up these stained glass windows. Some of our gifts have paid to restore them. But when the light comes through these stained glass windows, we're reminded not only of the stories and the images of our faith, but the people who have come before, who have laid things down that we can then take up and benefit from, that we haven't earned. We didn't have to work for these things. They were given to us when we took up this mantle. We get to sing beautiful songs that we did not write. We get to share words in worship that I did not come up with on my own. All these things are part of what we receive when we take up this mantle of worshiping in this place, of saying that we are followers of Jesus Christ in this particular congregation and in the Church Universal. And there are many other things that we receive, just like Elisha received the mantle of Elijah and adoption without having earned it. He was just out in his field. He had no idea what was going to happen. In the same way, we receive a lot of things just through grace. Through God's grace and the grace of those who have come before, whose work and vision we can benefit from. Just as we have blessings that we did not earn, as with Elisha, we inherit work that we did not ask for. We inherit challenges that we did not invite or begin. And yet these things are set before us nonetheless when we take up the mantle. When Elisha takes up the mantle, he has to deal with the Arameans and the Moabites and the idolatry and the Syrians. When we take up the mantle of those who have come before, of those who share our faith, there are things, there's work that we have to do as well, even if we didn't ask for it. We didn't start it. Like, we didn't invent racism and white supremacy. We didn't come up with those things. But it remains the case that Sunday morning right now is still the most segregated time in the United States. That is work we have inherited when we take up this mantle. We didn't invent sexism and misogyny. Those aren't things that we came up with just now. But yet almost no Christian denominations ordain women. We are one of the very few. And the women that we do ordain, if you talk to them, they will tell you they get burned out pretty quick. And they're treated differently from their male peers. And so many of them, after about 5 years or so, the majority have turned to another line of work other than ministry. You just can't deal with it anymore. This isn't something that we've caused, but it's something that's work that we inherit, that's set before us. None of us would wish any kind of sexual abuse on anyone. It's horrifying. And yet there are scandals now in every denomination. The Roman Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, every branch of Protestantism has scandals, either revealed or still working. And we have times when people who have preyed on others have been protected and hidden and moved around and enabled. We didn't do this. But this is work that we inherit when we take up this mantle. We didn't come up with homophobia. It isn't something we invented. It isn't something we would choose if given our options. And yet, among all the things that we can listen to Christian public figures say periodically that get in the news, about 7% of teenagers are LGBTQ, and 40% of homeless teenagers are LGBTQ. Why is that? Why are they 6 times more likely to be homeless than other teenagers? In almost every case, it's because their religious family, usually a Christian family, has driven them out, or denounced them, or cut them off. This isn't something that we chose, but when we take up the mantle, we inherit it. And just as was the case with Elisha, if we don't take up this work, if we just want the good things that we receive by grace, while ignoring the hard things that we inherit, we simply leave that work for others to do for us. We put our hand to the plow, but we look back. And we hope that someone else will do this job. Will we be like those that Jesus met in our reading from Luke, who have one more thing to do before they start to do the hard thing? Or who look at where this whole Jesus thing is headed and decide they're not interested in taking up that mantle? They see clearly where Jesus is going. They can get a sense of what it will be like. And they decide it's not worth it. We're going to step away. Or are we going to be like Elisha? Fully committed. Not only did he not put his hand to the plow and look back, he burnt his plow. And he took Elijah's mantle in adoption, and all of the blessings that brought, and all of the spiritual gifts, and the preparation and the strength that he didn't have to earn. And then when he took up Elijah's mantle, when Elijah died and was taken up into heaven by a chariot, he also took on all of the work that Elijah had left incomplete, and spent his life using the gifts he had received in adoption to do the work that was set before him. Will we receive that mantle? Both the blessing and the unfinished work